Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to host today's event on an introduction to the Bakery Equipment Assessment Group and Hygienic Equipment Design Certification. I'm Tawny Bridebell, BEAG's Assistant Director, and will be your moderator for today's webinar. There's a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to share before we get started. We will conduct Q&A following the presentation, and we will be fielding the questions through the Q&A tab. Please click on the Q&A icon and enter your question. And if you don't have your question ready, the upvote feature is available. Check out questions that have already been entered and like your favorite. Should time not be permitted to answer all questions during the Q&A session, we will be responding to your questions via email post-event. We also encourage you to use the chat as we go along. We always find out a lot of great information about our participants, and we want to hear you share and respond to anything you have an opinion on throughout the webinar. Lastly, we are using Zoom's live captioning feature. You can turn it on by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Please note that it is computer generated, so excuse any errors. And now I would like to extend a warm welcome to our presenter, John Anderson. John is a highly respected and recognized professional in the baking industry with over 30 years of experience in food safety, equipment design, occupational safety management, and regulatory compliance. Serving the Bakery Equipment Assessment Group as managing consultant, John directs the equipment assessment and evaluation process in which bakery equipment manufacturers certify their equipment conforms to the ANSI ASB Z52 sanitary design standard for bakery equipment. I'll hand it off to you now, John.
Okay. All right. Well, Connie, thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. And I'd like to thank all the people that are attending the seminar. I do appreciate the time you're taking away from your jobs and from your work day. And I hope you'll find the webinar helpful and informative. So let's go ahead and get started. What I would like to discuss today will include what we're trying to accomplish at BEAG and what our basis is for determining effective equipment design that will promote product safety and help to prevent food safety issues for the wholesale and retail bakers. We'll also talk about the criteria for equipment design. You know, Tawny mentioned the standard, the ANSI/ASB Z50.2-2015 bakery equipment sanitation requirements. And this standard as well is the basis for our criteria. This standard's evolved into what we use today, and it's taken some time for that to happen. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later and what that includes. We're also going to discuss the reasons for certifying your equipment and the process that you'll go by or go through for equipment certification. And as Tawny mentioned, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to submit them as Tawny has instructed you. So what is the Bakery Equipment Assessment Group? Well, our primary goal is to partner with equipment manufacturers and provide a method or a process by which equipment can be evaluated and allow the equipment manufacturer to show that their design of their equipment conforms to a set of rigorous design standards for cleanability and hygiene. Food safety efforts at the wholesale and retail bakeries are vital to our industry. Our reputation basically is on the line. The efforts that go into producing safe, quality products at the bakery are highly involved. They're complex, they're ongoing, and they're highly scrutinized. And I have always emphasized that at the core proper and effective hygienic design for bakery production equipment is the most fundamental level of all food safety and quality efforts. Without sound and effective equipment design for sanitation and safety, the work to maintain the safe products that we as consumers have come to expect is reflected in increased labor, increased downtime, and potentially increased risk to the consumer. It is with this in mind that BEAG has established the criteria for assessing and evaluating equipment design so that the equipment manufacturer can show their customer the equipment conforms to a demanding set of standards for hygienic design. Our secondary goal, and it is a goal just as important to us as providing an equipment certification process for equipment manufacturers, our secondary goal will be to partner with wholesale and retail bakers to give them the opportunity to select equipment that meets a design standard and that can provide them a higher level of safety and productivity. We'll also provide guidance with equipment modifications and installation so they are equipped to maintain a high level of product safety in their facilities. BEAG has evolved from the Baking Industry Sanitation Standards Committee, or BISC, to provide a much needed method of showing not only bakers, but also third-party food safety inspectors, health inspectors, and FDA regulatory compliance officers that the equipment used in our industry conforms to a comprehensive and detailed set of design standards that enhance food safety and protect the consumer. BISC was acquired by the American Society of Bakery Engineers in early 2022. ASB provides the association management services to BEAG, but BEAG is a separate corporation and has assumed the equipment certification process formerly managed by BISC and AIB International. Over the past few years, the process of equipment certification and the determination of conformance to a design standard was not given the attention that it needed and it deserved. BEAG is working to bring the value of effective equipment design back into focus for our industries. The old BISC standards are gone. In fact, they haven't been used or in effect since 2003. 2003, the ASB Z50 committee was formed, and it began the process of improving the standards. The Z50 committee utilized the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, the ANSI rulemaking process to give the standards more prestige and respect. And I'm going to speak more to the rulemaking process as we go along. But by using the ANSI rulemaking process, the committee revitalized the standards, updated and modernized the standards, and made them reflective of how wholesale and retail bakeries operate today. New processes were considered, new equipment was included, current methods of hygienic design were added, balanced group of equipment design engineers, wholesale and retail bakers, and food safety experts came together to make the current standards highly effective, widely recognized as the preeminent standards for the hygienic design of bakery equipment. I need to mention that ASB is the secretariat for the ANSI Z50.2 standard, which is the design standard for bakery equipment, and also the Z50.1 standard, which is the occupational safety standard. ASB and the Z50 committee manage the process of maintaining the integrity of the standard and following the ANSI rulemaking process requirements. This is an ongoing process that you can become involved with. So as I mentioned earlier, our industry wrote the design standards that we use as for hygienic equipment design. ANSI did not write the standards. ANSI creates the process by which our industry writes the standard. Experts from the bakery equipment manufacturing industry, wholesale and retail bakers, and food safety experts from the baking industry come together, and over several months, and over the several months, developed the standard that we use today. But as a critical part of the ANSI rulemaking process, there are 10 essential requirements for due process required in writing any industry standard. And I focused on what I believe to be the 5 most relevant criteria to this discussion. The first one that I want to talk about is openness. Anyone from our industry, any baker, equipment manufacturer, food safety expert, anybody can be a part of the Z50 committee. Anyone can comment on the standard, make suggestions for improvement. They can question the criteria. They can make suggestions for change to the standard. Anyone is free to contribute. You don't have to join the committee, although we would encourage you to join and we'd love for you to be there. And there is also no membership fee for joining the committee. But anyone, any person associated with the industry, shape or form, can be a part of it. It's just wide open to everybody. The other criteria that we need to follow is a lack of dominance. We need to show that there isn't any one particular group that dominates this committee. The committee works to keep an even number of interest groups represented. In fact, it's a critical aspect that ANSI reviews on a periodic basis when they inspect and audit our processes. And the process is designed to maintain the integrity of the standard. So a lack of dominance is extremely important for this. And along with that goes a balance. And I've mentioned it before, but it's worth mentioning and again. The ASB Z50 committee maintains a balance of equipment manufacturers, wholesale and retail bakers, and food safety experts to ensure that we maintain the standard in a manner that does not favor any one interest or business group or focus over another. And in the 20+ years that I've been involved with this committee, the groups have always worked well together, and the intent and goal of maintaining a sound and effective standard for our industry has been paramount in their objectives. The next item that we have to follow is that all views and objections are considered. And I apologize for the typo there. That's on me. Objectives should read objections. The committee takes in all expressed views of the standard. Any objections to the standard or the criteria, any objections or suggestions for improvement made by any participant or any industry person, we review each individual comment and viewpoint and consider them. And if there's a consensus vote by the committee members to make that change, then the change is made. This is a living document. It can change, and you have the power to implement change or additions to the criteria if you feel it's necessary. The standard only improves when it is constantly reviewed and updated to keep pace with new ideas, new methods, new technologies, and new information in science. All changes and additions to the standard and all changes to the rulemaking procedures require a consensus vote by the committee in order for this to go into effect. These votes are documented and available for us to review. I want to take some time and talk a little bit about the ANSI standard itself. I want to talk about where it came from and where it's heading. This is just kind of a short history on the origins of the ANSI Z50.2 bakery equipment sanitation requirements. World War II was over. It ended, and the baking industry enjoyed a huge amount of growth in a very short amount of time. Fast food restaurants were becoming very popular, and the baking industry grew along with the renewed peace and the surging economy that happened at that time. In 1949, the baking industry came together to write equipment design standards for our industry. The feeling was that if we didn't develop our own industry standards, the federal government would develop standards for us and without our input. The fear was that if the government developed the standards, they would place an unnecessarily high burden of compliance on our industry. So The industry associations, the American Bakers Association, American Institute of Baking, the Bakery Equipment Manufacturers Association, Biscuit and Cracker Manufacturers Association, and the Retail Bakers Association came together and developed the voluntary standards for sanitary design and the construction of bakery equipment. And since then, there have been several updates and improvements to the standard. From 1977 to 1998, the standard was reviewed and updated several times and somewhat consistently over those years. But the changes didn't go quite far enough to really show the improvements the industry needed to keep up with events in food safety and new design technologies. So in 2002, the industry felt it was time to make an important move. The criteria needed improvement to maintain the respectability of the standard. There was also the possibility that the National Sanitation Foundation, or NSF, was going to write their own ANSI standard for bakery equipment design and implement a costly and lengthy process of equipment design testing, verification, and validation, including cleaning process tests and swab testings for pathogens. So as a result, the Z50 committee was formed and the ANSI rulemaking process was followed to provide our industry with a much improved and relevant standard for design. It was updated again in 2008, 2013, and 2015. In 2015, the ASB and Z50 committee organized a team of working groups to update the standard. The working groups each took sections of the ANSI standard and made numerous updates, additions, and modifications to the standard. This process took a total of 2 years to complete. And most recently, the standard was reviewed by the Z50 committee in 2020, providing us with the current standard that we work with today as our guidance document for equipment assessment and certification. We feel that the work that has gone into making this a highly effective, one-of-a-kind standard has added a great deal of value to our industry. The standard has six sections. Section 1 gives us the basic criteria for bakery equipment. Section 1 will explain the scope and purpose of the standard and explains how it is applied to new and existing equipment. Section 2 provides definitions that explain terms and phrases found in the text of the standard. And Section 5 provides some of the existing and relevant standards that are referenced in the text and other relevant criteria from other standards that are also referenced in this standard. But it's Section 3 and Section 4 that provide the focus for hygienic design of production equipment. And these are the two most important sections that you need to pay attention to when you're reviewing the standard. All equipment that you wish to evaluate and recognize as conforming to the ANSI Z50.2 standard will have to comply and conform to the criteria in Section 3. These are the general principles of design and construction. This section includes criteria within the product zone and the non-product zone, and it'll also provide guidance on instruction for cleaning and cleaning in place systems, or CIP systems. Section 4 is titled Specific Principles of Design. In the baking industry, as you know, we have many different kinds of equipment, and each perform functions, and each are designed differently. Section 4 addresses these differences with criteria specific to bakery equipment. Section 4 is not an exception to Section 3, as some might believe. Section 4 is in addition to Section 3. And if and only if there is an applicable standard in Section 4 that applies to the equipment we wish to certify. So for example, if you wish to certify an oven, for example, or a deck oven, you would comply with Section 3 and the appropriate standard in Section 4 that addresses ovens and deck ovens. Same with slicers, molders, rounders, proof boxes, all kinds of different types of equipment that we have. Section 4 will identify the specific criteria that is in addition to Section 3. I do believe that it's value spent reviewing Section 3 and the relevant standards in Section 4 so that you can become familiar with the criteria your equipment must comply with or conform to. So why should I certify my bakery equipment? There's several reasons. I feel that by certifying your equipment with BEAG, and more importantly, designing equipment that conforms to the ANSI Z50.2 standard, you provide the baker with the ability to select equipment that will help form the foundation of their food safety and product quality programs. The baker understands how equipment design is fundamental to their efforts to maintain their brand name and product image with the consumer. Easy to clean equipment allows production of baked goods to achieve efficiencies that can't be achieved with outdated or non-conforming equipment. Equipment cleaning is faster and more efficient. Product changeover is faster and more efficient. Efficient cleaning gives back more time to production and maintenance, and that's valuable to the baker. With allergens as a major concern for bakers, the ability to clean and remove allergen proteins and to prevent contamination or cross-contamination has become critical in maintaining safe products. An investment in equipment conforming to a highly respected hygienic design standard is an investment in the success of your company. Whether you're an equipment manufacturer or a baker, this is a win-win. It's a win-win for our industry and for the consumer. And aside from a smart business strategy or the ethical and moral perspective of conforming to an equipment design standard, there are specific regulatory reasons for certifying your equipment as well. The FDA requires compliance with hygienic design and states the requirement in FDA regulation Title 21, Section 117.4. FDA authorities have explained to the food industry that if product contamination causes injury, or if a foodborne illness is caused by inadequate equipment design and cleaning, the end user of the production equipment will be held responsible for equipment that has not been built to conform to hygienic design standards. The end user of the equipment will bear the brunt of any legal action taken by the FDA. So it seems to me that it would make good business sense to help the end user of production equipment comply with federal regulations. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over these regulations. I know that may be the quickest way to lose an audience, but I want to make a point. And the point I'm trying to make here is that bakers undergo several third-party safety audits, food safety audits from their customers and independent food safety inspection companies. They may have as many as 2 or 3 a month, sometimes more. And in some locations I've been to, they have individuals hired strictly, and their job is strictly to go along with regulatory compliance inspectors or third-party inspectors or customer inspectors. And there are several different kinds of certification inspection standards that they may be expected to comply with. All have requirements for verifying the equipment that they use in production has met the hygienic equipment design standards. The most common certification scheme for food safety inspection is the BRC Global Standard for Food Safety. This standard requires equipment to be constructed of appropriate materials and suitable for food contact. Another one of the most commonly used audit schemes is the SQF standard. And this standard requires the baker to have documented specifications for selecting and procuring equipment, procedures for purchasing properly designed equipment, and the ANSI standard, the ANSI Z50.2 standard, and the BEAG conformance process is an excellent method for specifying design criteria and documenting the fact that equipment meets the standard. And the IFS food safety and quality management system requires documentation that equipment is verified as conforming. The conformance certificate obtained by the BEAG process will help your customers comply with this and the other certification inspection schemes. Another win-win for you and the end user. So how do I certify my equipment? To start the process, you'll have to log on to the beaggroup.org website. That's agroup.org. It's AG group with 1 G. And you follow these steps. The process is pretty well self-explanatory, but you must begin by becoming a member of BEAG. After you complete your profile, you can begin the process of internal conformance assessment. Right now, we're waiving the requirement to have an internal equipment evaluator, a certified internal equipment evaluator. And when we have our learning management system up and running, an individual from each equipment manufacturing location, not the overall company, but each equipment manufacturing location, will watch and review this educational program that will explain the ANSI Z50.2 standard in detail and cover the aspects of each standard and criteria. And at the conclusion, that individual will take a test based on what they have learned in the program. And when that test is passed, you will be entered into our database as an internal equipment evaluator. And you will be the one for your manufacturing site to perform the process of equipment assessment and determine conformity to the standard. The internal equipment evaluator certification will be renewed every 2 years. The internal equipment evaluator will fill out an application for the equipment items or models the company wishes to have certified. Individual equipment items are entered, or several equipment items that are considered to be the same model can be entered into or under a single application. But it's important to remember that different equipment considered to be the same model will perform the same function, but may differ only in size and capacity. So you can have several different models entered in under one specific application. When the application for internal conformance assessments submitted, the equipment assessment form is sent to the evaluator via email, and when completed, the form is submitted to BEAG. Upon review of the assessment form, the equipment is either accepted as conforming or rejected. If accepted, the certificate of conformance will be emailed directly to the equipment evaluator. If the evaluation is for an equipment item already in the BEAG system and the equipment has been modified, changed, you will be asked to complete a management of change form to determine if the changes have affected conformance to the standard. There's also an optional third-party evaluation process, and if you choose to use this process, you can consider it to be a higher form of certification and is done by an independent inspector. The process is the same, except that BEAG will have an independent inspector contact the client company and make arrangements for an on-site inspection of the equipment or the equipment items that you wish to go through this process. The cost of going through the process of internal conformance assessment is very reasonable, has not changed much since the BISC days. Membership is $455 and renewable on an annual basis. Applications for internal assessment per equipment item and per model designation is $275. The price of internal equipment evaluator certification is yet to be determined and will be renewable once every 2 years. And I need to mention that the applications for internal assessment are renewable on an annual basis as well. For the third-party conformance evaluation, the price of the inspection is $1775 plus the travel expenses incurred by the independent inspector. Membership will also be renewable each year, and equipment application will also be renewable each year in order to maintain the third-party conformance status which is renewable every 4 years. If you want to maintain that third-party conformance status, you would have to have an independent evaluation performed every 4 years. Web advertising is $175 and renewable every year. And I'd encourage you to consider web advertising. With web advertising, you're going to be able to show what equipment items that you have that have been certified or third-party verified. Bakers have used this site in the past to identify equipment that they wish to consider for installation in their bakeries. And regulators and health inspectors have used this feature in the past to determine if equipment in question, for whatever, has been designed and certified to the ANSI Z50.2 standard. I probably get 1 or 2 inquiries by regulators or health inspectors on a monthly basis, wondering if a specific model made by a particular company has been certified. So that goes a long way in adding value to your service to your customers. And the ANSI standard is $45, and updates will be announced on the BEAG website. So what we've talked about in this program is a little bit about what the BEAG goals are and the criteria for equipment design. We also discussed the reasons for becoming certified and the process to follow for equipment certification. I certainly hope that you found the information to be useful. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Please ask away. So thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you. And again, everyone, please enter any of your questions in the Q&A tab down at the bottom of your screen. And we will take questions now, or John will take questions. John, we do have a couple coming in, and of course, you can use the upvote as well. But we do have a couple in there. First question, how do we integrate the same standards into the building design?
Well, that's an excellent question. Right now, our focus with the ANSI Z50.2 standard is on equipment design, but hopefully in the very near future, we're going to have a product that will help with guidance on installation of equipment into a facility, and it's also going to have guidance on building design, floors, walls, ceiling, piping, systems, and that sort of thing. And that is in the works right now and should be available very soon. And we'll make sure that there's an announcement put out, and we'll try to direct each one of you with information, direct that information to each one of you.
And is BAG recognized by NSF?
No, these are 2 different entities. NSF has their own criteria for a variety of equipment, and they have their own process by which they certify and recognize equipment. But the BEAG process is very specific to bakery equipment, and NSF does not really have anything that focuses on bakery equipment unless you specifically ask them to test and review your. But our focus is strictly for bakery equipment.
And John, you may have, I think you answered some of this question, but this is a 2-part question. How long does certification last? And can you access previous certification questionnaires and records?
Yeah, well, certification will last for a year. You have to renew that application on an annual basis along with your membership. And moving forward, the documents and the records that we generate through the process with BEAG will be available. But as we went through that acquisition process with BISC and AIB International, we were provided with paper files, physical documentation of past certifications, and there's about 4 to 5 years worth of history that we have available to us. So if any of that information is needed for whatever reason, we can certainly try to find it for you and hope to find it for you. But I'm pretty confident that we have a lot of that information available.
Are the ANSI standards still available online?
Yes, they are.
You can access them through ASB website, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, they are also available through BEAG.
Correct. And that when you select that and you want to purchase that standard, it directs you to the ASB website.
And okay, Kristen, I believe you said you wanted to answer a question live. I will we'll wait to answer that one last. We have a question on, does NSF certification qualify GFSI requirements?
Yes, it would. Any document that shows a conformance to a standard, a design would satisfy the third-party inspector for any GFSI inspection.
And well, I'll answer this question. There are currently there's 26 participants today, Greg. One more question here, John, and again, I think you covered some of this in your presentation, but just to confirm the information, are you, BEAG, taking over what was previously done, had been done by AIB for BISC?
Yes, yeah, we have completely taken over.
It looks like we might have lost John's connection there. So this is Kristen. Can you hear me, Johnny?
I can hear you. Yes, I thought maybe it was me.
Nope,
Okay.
I think it's John. So hopefully he'll be back on here, but I can answer that question. So we have taken over the certification, the labeling, and then we are also going to start offering the internal equipment inspector coursework and training there as well. And then we are working on what was previously a in-person course. We are working on reconstituting that as a virtual course that can be conducted online with testing and recertification requirements, and that is coming soon. So I hope that answered that question that came up. And Tawny, I can certainly help answer some of these questions, maybe until John comes back.
Yeah, I guess there's one more question here, and it's how many bakery companies asking for this requirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And oh, John, you are
there he
back.
is. John,
sorry.
welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
So John, I fielded for us the question about what we are taking on from the services that AIB previously provided as part of the BISC. So I covered that piece for us, but the new question that we were just about to address was how many bakery or baking companies are asking for this new certification or the services that BEAG will offer.
Well, I think we've got about at last count, we got about 20, we've got about 71 companies that are a part of this program, and that number has been growing.
And I think also helpful to point out, again, this is Kristen Spriggs, the new executive director for both ASB and here for BEAG. the relationship here that BEAG is reconstituted here from the former BISC was based on a need that the ASB Board of Directors identified. And so really, recognizing the need in the industry to continue to provide this service and to continue to produce this kind of education and resource within the industry. So I think that can also help speak to how many are seeing value in this new requirement.
Thank you, John and Kristen. We have a couple more in here. John, how long does it take for someone to be certified as an internal inspector evaluator?
Well, that process should take at most a day. I think we're gonna take that educational program and break it up into component parts, so a person doesn't have to spend their entire day going through that process. But it shouldn't take very long, and I would imagine that it would be pretty efficient when we get that completed.
The certification is a model specific or not machine specific, correct?
Well, the certification will be equipment specific. When you fill out an application for a particular equipment item. Now, as I mentioned, you can fill out an application for several different equipment items as long as they are considered to be the same model and only differ in size and capacity. So in that sense, you would be certifying the model to conform to the standard.
They keep coming in, John, which is a good thing. What is the ratio of equipment manufacturers to end users in the membership of BEAG?
In the membership?
Mhm.
Well, right now we're very heavy on equipment manufacturers because that's where our focus is. And that's what this whole process is geared for, to allow the equipment manufacturer to buy their equipment. But as we grow and as we provide more guidance in terms of how equipment is installed, how processes are installed, and how to create a process environment where you're protecting food safety or protecting the product for food safety, I think we'll probably gain more bakers. We want to provide more educational products that cover a variety of things, not just equipment design, but food safety in general, and product safety and quality. So I think as we grow, we'll probably see more bakers become involved in this process. But it's going to take time because the baker hasn't really been able to be a part of this process in the past when it was BISC. But now as we move forward in our goal to partner more with the baking industry and the equipment manufacturers, I think we'll see that trend grow to have more bakers involved in the process.
John and Tani, there were a couple of questions over in the chat that I'm just want to catch up for people separate from the Q&A. Will this webinar be available offline or in a recorded format? Yes. So we will be getting that posted. And once that is posted, for those of you that participated, we will send you a note that lets you know where you can download that webinar recording. And then there was also another question about training courses for those who will have a designated rep or facilitator for their equipment. That question was posed a little bit earlier in the session, but I just want to clarify for the individual who asked that question. I think you're talking about the internal equipment evaluator when you say rep or facilitator. And yes, we are working on those training courses. That's what we referenced earlier, that will be done online. There will be a testing component, a recertification component, and that we are looking to launch before the end of 2023. Those are the ones from the chat.
Okay,
Oh.
and one more came in. John, will you be at IBIE? And will there be outreach to the international bakery industry?
Well, I'd like to attend. I'm going to have to look into that. I think it's very important for us to be there. And yes, we will reach out to international manufacturers. And in fact, we already have international manufacturers as a part of the BEAG. And they have been in the past. And I've just spoken to a couple just within the last couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, and tried to encourage them to become involved. They see more of an interest in their products from the United States, and that there is a need for them to comply with a design standard and conform to the hygienic design requirements in the ANSI standard. So yes, I expect that to grow. We already have a good and sizable representation from foreign companies, and I expect that to grow.
IBIE will be here before we know it, right?
It will.
One more question here. Someone had, Frank had his BIS evaluator certification, which is expired. Do I have to recertify?
Not yet. Right now, since we don't have the educational product up and running for the internal equipment evaluator, we are recognizing all past what used to be called internal inspectors or equipment inspectors. We're recognizing all those certifications until such time as we can get that product, that educational product up and running. And we'll certainly let people know that that it's available and that they can go through that process.
These are all great questions. Please keep them coming in. We do have another one from Chris Moore. When will the first manufacturing companies have their equipment certified?
Oh, there's already been several that have certified equipment, quite a few actually. They've already gone through the process. This process has been up and running for about 3 or 4 months. So sign up and get on board.
Well, John, with all the questions that have come through the Q&A, any more questions added, or Kristen, is there any coming through the chat?
Can you talk to yes, there's another one that came in through the chat. Can you talk to commercial baking versus a baking company? Like a wholesale or commercial or co-manufacturer?
Can we talk to them? I'm not sure I understand the question, but we will include all bakery manufacturers, whether they're retail, wholesale.
Yeah. I think that was the gist of the question, John. In fact, I know there's been some discussion already, and we've completed some work for some retail baking operations that needed documentation before opening. Can you even give some examples of that for us, John?
Oh, yeah, that's, you know, I hate it when those calls come in because it's usually an emergency. And typically it's a retail baker. There have been some wholesale bakeries that have had this issue, but I've gotten over the course of the years, and when I was managing BISC at AIB, this happened fairly often, and a health inspector would not sign off on an occupancy permit or allow a baker to begin production until they could show that the equipment that they're using in their bakery did conform to a hygienic design standard. So there's a mad rush to get a third-party inspector out to that location to go through each and every piece of equipment to make sure that it meets the design criteria in Section 3 and Section 4 that applies, and show that they they do conform. That's bad in and of itself, but when it really gets bad when the inspector gets out there and realizes that some or at least one piece of equipment in the process does not meet a design standard. And that causes additional delays and issues for the baker. So it's kind of hard. It's one of those things where I would like to be able to get that message out to individuals who are starting their own bakeries or companies that are looking to put in a new process or product line or new equipment, making sure that it does meet design standard and conforms to a hygienic design. I think it's extremely important from a regulatory perspective, and obviously from the ethical and moral perspective of creating a safe work environment, safe production environment for the consumer. But those issues have come up more often than I like to deal with, because it's not a comfortable situation for the manufacturing company or for the retail baker. And it doesn't always end the way you would like for it to. That's why I would like people to kind of get out ahead of this and make sure that the equipment that they procure for their process, for their production environment, does meet a design standard.
Take myself off mute. Another question came in, and question is there not seeing much instruction on the website and how to sign up and gain the information or access to the forms, etc., to become certified?
Instruction, is that what?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, we very quickly will have a instructional video on the website that will walk you through each and every step and make it very clear. That should be coming pretty soon. And I'm always available if you'd like. We can always talk and walk through the process if needed.
Do you have 5 more minutes if there's any more questions? Or Kristen, if there's anything you want to add before we adjourn the webinar, or John? Well, we have one more question. Let's see. We currently use old BISC label symbol on our literature machines. Is it okay to start using the BEAG symbol on our literature machines? Are there labels for purchase?
Yes, there are. That's an easy question to answer. Obviously, we would encourage you to no longer use the BISC labels. But we do have BEAG certified and verified labels for purchase, and you can purchase those on our website. In fact, there were a couple examples in the presentation of the new labels.
Thank you, John. Well, one more question. What was the difference in the 2 labels you showed?
Well, the 2 labels were one size, obviously, but one label showed that the equipment was certified. That is the label that you receive when you go through the internal conformance assessment process. The other label that we showed shows the third-party verification or third-party equipment evaluation. And like I mentioned, that label indicating that an independent inspector has come out to the manufacturing site and taken a look at and evaluated the equipment to make sure it conforms to the standard is the highest form of recognition of conformity that we have. So the two labels are certification and verification. And with each one of those labels, there are 2 different sizes. There's a 3x3 and a 2.5 by 2.5 size.
Well, I want to thank John, one, for your expertise and your time today, and sharing this wealth of information with our audience today. And as we did mention before Kristen commented on, we will have this posted. This is being recorded, so we will have it available online for everyone to access. And please make sure to be on a lookout for an email survey in the next 24 hours. We appreciate your feedback on today's webinar, as well as any future content or webinars you'd like BEAG to produce. And most importantly, I want to thank our virtual audience today for engaging with us today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John, for your words and sharing your insights. And Tawny, thanks for serving as our host and moderator today.
Everyone have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.